Hello, my fellow Voyagers, and welcome back to Soul Specs Healing Abyss. I am Ja, your host, and I love that you return because I have so many new topics to discuss and talk about. But I wanted to remind people that this podcast is about going into the depths of the soul. The soul, regardless if people believe it is real or not, there is something that is inside of this human flesh that is alive. And when we pass and our avatar no longer can go on, something leaves this body and goes somewhere. And as the human, we get to experience this physical reality of different consciousness that have been collected over time. This is what I believe is the soul's consciousness. And as we feel and experience different things in life, we start to recognize that this feels familiar. Even though I've never experienced this, it feels familiar for some reason. And I like to believe that this comes from a place of learning how to trust our intuition. Like there's things that we know, but we don't know why we know it. And because of societal rules, we feel like we have imposter syndrome, and it's like we doubt ourselves and we don't believe in ourselves. And this is where I feel confidence comes into play because it's not really talked about in a way that I feel rewards people. Usually, when I hear people talk about confidence, it's in a way where people are kind of dogging someone for having too much versus someone who has none, and then they're the underdog and they root for them to get their confidence. And then once they have it, people love it, but if you overuse it, people hate it. And so I really wanted to dive into the interplay between confidence and interpersonal experiences because I feel that interpersonal experiences really offer valuable insights and advice for how we should proceed through future conversations or interactions. I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing that you have a certain way of communicating with people or talking with people if it's receptive. Remember, if you're communicating with people where there's always resistance and there's always confrontation, then there's probably some lack of, I'm going to say, empathy, because you have to know when to recognize that people like likable people, right? And that usually comes from a place of being a confident personality. Now, this is not something that I feel is really given to us. I think it is kind of born inside of us. I think there's a level of you have to know no matter what interest you are into or what your cultural background is or any of that. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from. If you're not confident in how you present yourself, it's going to show. Like, there's no way of getting around that type of challenge. It becomes a challenge where you walk up to someone and you're being your authentic self and you want to talk about a certain topic, and most people are into it or not into it because they're trying to assess if they even want to be there. I think people forget that. Like, I read the room when I walk in. Like, if I see that people are engaging and want to engage with me, then I will engage back. If I see that they're kind of short or kind of wishy-washy on their answers, it tells me that they're not confident in either the conversation or they just don't want to be there. Either which one, I don't want to force someone into trying to talk to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to feel like I am walking out into a world wearing this mask because society doesn't really care about the stuff that I think they care about. And That's even though it's true, that also is a part of confidence that you have to learn for yourself too, where not so much the martyr or woe is me, or it's like no one likes me, no one wants to talk about what I like. It's more about like, oh, these people just aren't my tribe. They're just not interested in the things I have to talk about because we're on a different frequency. Not that anyone's better than anyone, just different frequencies. This is just how it works. Like when you hear a sound of a certain voice, or where you hear music and a certain note, if when it hits you and it just makes you get the goosies and you feel happy or you feel peaceful or you feel whatever the point is, if it can make you feel, that's a frequency, right? That's something that is tuning into your antenna, your body, and telling you how to interact with a certain stimuli or certain thing in your environment. So, one of the things that I wanted to discuss was how confidence affects how we interact. And I wanted to talk about confidence of the ego versus confidence of soul knowing. So we have to understand that confidence plays a role in how we see and communicate with each other. And unfortunately, people who seem confident usually come off in our society as loud and very pushy, or what we call main character energy, where they need all eyes on them. And I'm going to say that that is a byproduct of confidence, but that is not necessarily the face of confidence, right? I think we've gotten used to that because, again, society conditions us to feel that things have to look and feel a certain way. But this is why interpretation of an energy is important, because it's going to come from many different facets of many different people. This is why I love that movie, Vantage Point, where they're showing every different perspective of the same event. But because it's a different perspective, people saw different evidence. And so this is the same when it comes to why we deem certain people more confident than others, and why we feel it's annoying that some people are confident, because I think a lot of people are stuck between those two worlds, which is the truly confident person who can walk into any room and not need validation, but they also aren't seeking it. They're just walking in being themselves, but because they have an air of grace or this type of way of their posture. Remember, posture tells people how confident you feel or look about yourself. For some reason, when people aren't confident, they hunch. I used to be a huge huncher. I'm very tall, so it was very noticeable that I was hunching. I didn't know I was hunching until one day I looked at some pictures of me and my friends, and I was like, why am I always hunched over? And it's like, well, even though you don't realize you're doing it subconsciously, you're so used to being tall that you're trying to squinch yourself down to fit the frame for them, where you'll always fit the frame. Like they just have to make you fit in the picture. But if you're going to force yourself to fit into their picture, that's how you shrink your confidence. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think people really think about it in that aspect. If it's very simple, where little things over time start to communicate with your human body. And those stimuli from the outside world believe that it's true. So you continually shrink yourself in any environment where you feel awkward or you feel like you're not able to be confident, in what you feel a smooth interaction looks like, right? Because people will create problems, you know what I mean, if they think that you're not strong enough emotionally. And it's sad, but it's true. And so knowing that your human body presents itself as confident, that's part of it, but it's not the whole of it. I feel a lot of us spend more time trying to make ourselves look confident versus being confident. And this is where the soul knowing comes in. So, soul knowing is where, let's say, for me, I have the most random dreams, like the most random dreams, but they're always consistent, where my soul is in some huge building and there's many, many doors. And in these doors, there's people I know, there's scenery I know, there's memories I know, but none of them seem connected, right? None of them seem to correlate. I noticed that every time I'm going through something in my life, and I know there's a ton of books on dreams and interpretations and all that, and I know the answers are already out there, but for me, this is about my experience, which is I started to notice that it was my soul's last checkpoints. Things that I've experienced that I knew I experienced, but I just didn't complete. And for some reason, I was always wondering, like, why do I always feel like I'm running or being chased in these dreams? And I'd be looking around, and whatever the villain that I created in that vision or antagonist that I created in that vision, it's literally like they run right by me every time. They never actually like come after me. They don't see me or they just choose not to see me and they go for something else. And I was like, what is that about? And it was like, that's the point. You're protected. There's nothing that you need to run from. You have to go back and heal those old timelines. And my soul was like, I don't know how. And it's like, yes, you do. You've been running around trying to find someone to help you, but in the meantime, you're running around undetected. No one can see you, but you're not choosing to let yourself be seen by you. And so now you don't trust anything that you do. And it seems like a very convoluted top or sentence, but that's the moment I realized I needed soul confidence. Like, even in my dreams, I wasn't allowing myself to be confident. And it was like, you literally are the creator of this inner world. Like, you can move walls and anything you want to do in this world. So, why are you not allowing yourself to solve problems that you know you created? And when I would wake up, I would be like, you know what? I need to apply that to my human avatar life. And so, this is what for me started my spiritual journey back to me because I would talk about certain things and notice people didn't really care but they still like being around me. And I would be like, okay, well, what's that about? Why do they enjoy being around me, but they don't enjoy what I have to talk about? And that's when I started to make connections between people who like confident energy, but they don't really enjoy the confident person because they start to mirror and deflect and reject certain aspects of them where they think that the person thinks that they're better than whatever said environment they're in. And this is where I feel the distorted energy comes in because we have to remember there's different levels of confidence, right? In every interaction that you have. And if you are a confident person who's genuine, you have to know that you might have to sometimes adjust um, how much energy you give. That's what I would say. And the soul then guides you through this interaction where, let's say, you walk into a room, you're feeling good, you're looking good, you're just happy to be there, and people are just staring at you. No one's saying anything. So you go sit down, and like no one's talking to you, everyone's just looking at you. Now, in this moment, you, depending on your confidence, could be feeling one or two things. Like, why is everyone looking at me? Is there something wrong with me? Is there something on my face? Or you can be like, oh, everybody looking at me because I'm cute. Everybody looking at me because I know I'm cute and they like looking at me, right? These are choices. This is free will. This is how we decide how we want to feel. And based on these feelings is how the body is then going to give our electro signals back to the brain, which is emotions, intuitions, the gut. And then the brain is going to try to interpret that into whatever it remembers from the past and associate it with what's happening now. If you have confidence in your soul will not go down this rabbit hole of disaster with you. It will say, hey, We've been here before. Maybe when we were younger, we needed that validation of if people liked us or didn't like us. It doesn't matter. People are always going to find a way to not like you. But hold your head up high, remain confident in yourself, smile, give good energy, and whatever is meant to flow to you will flow to you. This is where the ego can then say, thank you. You're right. I don't know why I would care so much. These people aren't doing anything to me. They're just looking at me. It is what it is. I chose to step out and be big and beautiful. So therefore, I need to expect people to stare at me, right? This is just how it goes. I'm just being silly with the different topics that are the examples I'm using, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. It's that when you're learning how to talk, it's about saying what's your truth. I meet a lot of people who, when they meet me, they're like, "You speak like you just know, like it's just the absolute truth." And I'm like, "Absolutely," because up until this point, everything that I experienced, this is my truth. And for me to denounce my truth based on you needing proof, that's not going to help my confidence. That's not going to help your intelligence, right? Now we're just playing dumb together because your confidence is low and you're insecure about how I speak and present myself, and then I'm feeling weird because now I'm thinking like, oh, am I overstepping? Am I being too much? And I tell people, no. Unless you're going out of your way to not listen to someone and be condescending and gaslight and shut them down, then yeah, no, that is someone who is not using their confidence right. They're just being a bully. Because believe it or not, bullies have to have confidence in order to be a bully. You have to feel and think that you're bigger and stronger and better or whatever to even step into that realm. It's a distorted type of confidence, but yet it's confidence. This is why so many people wear masks and they walk through the world trying to talk the loudest and be the loudest and trying to be the hardest or the toughest or trying to be the meanest. And it's like, or the most stoic. Remember, stoicism is a level of confidence that I admire, but at the same time, you can manipulate with stoicism because people feel that you are, um, I'm going to say, a leader of a certain type when you can sit back and kind of not let your emotions play you per se. Like you're not reactionary to everything, you're not responding to everything because, again, that shows how much confidence you have in yourself as well because it's telling you or it's telling others that you either have domain over your emotions or you don't. And usually that shows your level of maturity because let's just be real, you have to know how to talk to yourself. If you don't, then you're just going to be a wildfire. You're just going to spread everywhere and burn everything down. And unfortunately, there's consequences to blowing up the bridge. I always say, I don't burn bridges, I blow them up because I know I'm not going back. So you have to be prepared for that. And even in destruction, you have to have confidence because you don't want to be someone who goes around destroying things and then denying it. That shows weak character, in my opinion. You want to be able to be like, look, I did that, and it's not cool that I did that, but I'm confident enough to know that I can grow from this and move on, and hopefully, you can forgive me. If not, that's okay. It is what it is, and you move on about your day. But if you start, nah, you made me do this and you did that, and ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do, and I'm gonna be who I'm always gonna be, that's not confidence. That's stubbornness right there, right? That's someone denying their self the chance to grow into a more stronger you. I feel confidence and strength, regardless again of if people say you're too much or you just think you're all that. So what? Let them. I always say if you're not walking up to someone, smacking them in the face, spitting on them, being rude, you're just being you. And you don't stutter over your answers and you don't walk around trying to fit into anyone's world. So be it if people are going to have an opinion about you. Let them. They will always have an opinion about you. But the most important thing to do is to understand that when you adapt and communicate well with both confident and less confident people, you become that example. You become the example of how to set boundaries. You become the example of how to represent yourself. You become an example. And that's part of the world of being confident. I mean, I've seen a lot of people say, like, I don't want to be a role model. I didn't ask to be a role model. But it's like, well, if you have confidence, you're going to be a role model because you're telling the world, like, hey, I know how to not only appease my ego, who either needs to be seen or not be seen, or needs to interact or not interact, my soul also gets the opportunity to show their true identity, show what they know, show who they are, show what they've learned, and share it and not be afraid to share it because other people are going to try to denounce it because they haven't experienced it. There's so much of that in this world where people would rather go off the experience of others and study the experience of others and then say that's truth and fact over someone who literally may not be known by anyone, but they're going out and experiencing the actual physical world. So then they can come back and share that wisdom and knowledge and say, hey, I can confidently tell you this is my answer. That is a answer, but this is my answer. And both answers can be true because that person has experience and the person that you're studying or reading has experience too. So we can't say one is more important than the other because it's published or studied more. If people are actually using their confidence and going out and letting themselves experience new experiences, you're always going to be confident in how you learn, how you speak, how you interact with the world. Like there's times where I don't think about the stuff I do. I just go do it. Like I just get up and move. I know what to do. I've done it so many times. I was like, all right, just make sure you have your funds together. Make sure you know where you're staying. First things first, go to the post office. Make sure that, you get your mail sent there so that you can do that. And then, all right, now you got to make sure that you are working and blah, 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 blah. And then you just go down the checklist. And I was talking to a friend where I was like, oh, I moved here. I've lived in this state, in this city, in this country. And people were like, when did you have time to do all this? How did you just have the confidence to just drop everything? And that was one of the most profound questions to me because I was like, well, what's everything? And they're like, well, your home, your car, your job, your family. And I was like, well, those are beautiful things and they're important to me, but they're not my existence, right? They're my environment. And I didn't realize that having confidence in yourself enough to know that your identity is not where you grew up, your identity is not your family, your identity is not your culture. I'm sorry to tell you, everyone, but your identity is literally who you know you are and what you want to experience on this human plane in this spiritual time and place and why you came back. Because for me, the soul always has a mission. We all have a purpose. I was talking to a friend before where they were talking about the term NPC, the non playing characters or something. I'm not really sure the full acronym meaning, but I understand that there are people where, as humans and souls, we get to choose to come back and have a life of leisure or a life of purpose. Both are purposeful. But when I speak of purpose, I mean you want to create a living legacy that will live beyond your passing of flesh. And some people choose to do that with family, with friends, and how loving they are. Like when someone's talking about someone and people's faces light up, that's a legacy. That's a living legacy because your energy is so beautiful that it still makes people feel good. That's also confidence because you were so confident in who you are that people were able to see who you are and you became almost like kind of I want to say a mascot, but in a way, yeah, you became like this character for them that's like, what would blah 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 do? And I think that's beautiful. And so again, when we start to pay attention to how we lived our physical life and how we choose to live this physical life is how we leave the legacy of the spiritual life. And so if you choose to be an NPC per se, that's just saying you want to have a quiet life. You don't need to be known. You don't need any type of eyes on you. You and spirit are enough. You and Mother Gaia are enough. And we need people who want to be NPCs. It's not a bad thing. I know people, again, use it as a bad thing, but I see the duality in all. It's good that people just want to be balanced because that's the base, that's the core. We need a core to everything. We need a nucleus to everything. So that's what NPC represents to me. Outside of that, you start getting people who are like celebrities and athletes where their talent and skill get them to a certain point where they know that they want to share it. They know that they want other people to enjoy it the way they enjoy it and see all the work that they put into learning it. And this to me is a functional purpose, right? This is a functional purpose where now I get to show what I've learned on this earth thus far and integrate it with my spirit who has already experienced it. And they're teaching me how to interpret it into this physical realm through frequencies and source interactions, right? That is the vessel. That's the part where we're choosing to be a vessel. And as a vessel, we're not always going to know the outcome, like the outcome, appreciate the outcome. But as long as we stay confident and have faith in our path, we will not be deterred from our mission. When you know you're at this level and you don't care about the accolades or the award shows or fitting in with popular society, then you move into that humanitarian level, which is, where there's many different celebrities that you've seen do this, where they've dedicated their lives to using their celebrity to help the world globally, right? This becomes that faithful purpose. It takes you out of function and it takes you to a spiritual place because you're not thinking about anything other than helping future souls at that level of humanitarianism. And you have to be confident in who you are. You cannot let people talk you down off that platform because it's a place where it's like, it's not about me. It's not about what happens to me after I pass. It's about what happens to this society, what happens to this society of humans, and what happens to this society of the next generation of souls who are going to encompass these human bodies. That's why I always say when you see someone who is just angry and they're just focused on the past, that's an old soul trapped in an old timeline. And from the outside looking in, they look like they're trapped inside of like a glass bubble. From their point of view, it looks like you're some outsider trying to invade because they're in this glass bubble. And so it becomes really tricky because it is a safe place for them. But at the same time, they're stuck. Like they're stuck in an old timeline. And I learned I can't help anyone get out of that. I can only show them that there's a door and a pathway, and they have to choose to trust it and have faith. Belief will always be laced with doubt because you have to convince yourself on some level to believe. Believe, believe. This is possible. It can happen. Faith is where you jump out of that and you're like, no, I know. I know what I know, and you can't tell me nothing, right? That's the type of confidence where I say, like, you have done the work. You have put the time into yourself to really listen to your own experiences, to your parents' experiences, to your ancestors' experiences, and you're starting to apply it to yourself. And this becomes the soul work. I talk about the spiritual journey a lot, which is I don't do what I do because I think I know more than others. I do this because I really feel a deep connection to so many of us are lost from our souls. This is where I know depression and anxiety and everything comes from because this human avatar doesn't have the answers. It only utilizes experience to get its answers. This is how we validate science. We have to go out and prove it. That's man science, but the science is already existing. We're just dissecting it and giving it new names. But if you're going out into nature and taking a leaf and dissecting it, clearly our science does not supersede the science of the universe, which is already there, existing, right? We have to remember that this is a path of learning. It's not a path of we own. It's a path of we know and we learn and we work with and integrate with. And this will help us get more confidence in how, again, we work our way up through this human experience. You can use your confidence to just get attention and be the prettiest and be the most fashionable and be the most athletic. I think there's nothing wrong with any of those things I just listed off because I love looking good and taking care of myself physically and being pretty per se. But I also know that these are just mechanisms of how to call in like energy. And when you get the type of energy around you that you deserve, because if you're not confident, it doesn't matter how pretty or nice or cool you are. If you're insecure, there's going to be energy that feeds off of that, right? And they're going to explore how to either convince you that your self-image is worthy or non-worthy. And then for some reason, we as the humans take that self-image and we put that and apply it to everything. Well, if I'm not cool enough or pretty enough, then I'm not smart enough or worthy enough. And that's no, that's distortion. That comes from a place of lack, which is me not being told by myself that regardless of what you experience from your childhood, you as the adult now, the physical adult, get to have the opportunity to go back and reteach that kid how to love themselves, how to walk out into this world confidently and not feel intimidated or entitled to someone else's energy, right? Um, you know, we go through life feeling that we're supposed to act a certain way and talk a certain way and be a certain way. That's masking. It's fun to pick a character and be Delulu, as they say, and be whoever you want to be. But you still have to remember, once that mask comes off when you're at home by yourself, do you love you? Do you love what you did today? Do you love how you represented yourself today? Or do you feel that you were just out there trying to give the best show possible to get the most likes, but you still don't like yourself? This is why I say, no matter what, I'm a very confident person. If you understand what a confident person is, that means that I don't care if you like me or not like me, but that doesn't mean that I think I'm better than. It just means I don't need validation. That's where I reside. I can't speak for everyone else, but I know that for me, there's nothing anyone can do to make me feel bad that I haven't done to myself, right? I've been my own worst critic my entire life. And I'm just now getting to the point in my late 30s that I am like, I love you. I love you because when you were in a situation where most people will have fell apart, you held your ground and you stood up for me. And you made me feel safe. And you made me realize that I don't have to back down, even if everyone else is telling me I should. Or I don't have to stand up in this moment and be the voice of the people, even though everyone's saying I should. Remember, confidence is not about always speaking up. Confidence is also about knowing when to step back and step away and be like, this is not my battle. This is not my fight. I don't need to be involved in this. And you take care of you first. There's going to be a lot of people who be like, but what about this and what about family? Those are frosting. They're not the cake. You are always the cake. You are always the main ingredient. And if you choose to let the frosting take over the main ingredient, that is your choice. You can't get mad at family for being family, but you can learn your confidence in self and say, look, this is what you guys taught me. This is who you said I get to be if I chose to follow these rules. I'm choosing to be this person now, and you have to either accept it or not accept it, but I'm not going to dwell on it. That to me healed so much of my past soul life stuff because my soul, I can feel my parents like timeline living. I'm a kid of divorce, so you're gonna always feel that in you, and you're gonna always feel the breakage of that connection because you are literally biologically their two energies connected. So if they're broken apart, you feel it and you start feeling what they think and how they experience life. And then you have to remember like, well, those aren't my emotions, those are their emotions. So how do I learn how to trust my gut over what their gut was and what they taught me? And this is where I say self-esteem is the most important part of the self-confidence journey because this is how we then start to integrate mindfulness and conscious thinking into our everyday life. Like emotional intelligence, the breakdown of it for me is those two things, mindfulness and respect of self. And so when you allow the soul to go into this journey and ask questions and provide answers, I mean, sometimes the answers that come to my mind sound so crazy. They sound like, "Oh, how do you know, Juwan? How do you know? How do you know?" It's like, I don't know, but I feel I know, and I'm going to trust it. And then I'll go look it up, and it's right. It's correct, at least as far as what others have experienced. Because again, just because a collective has experienced it doesn't mean that it's our full truth. But we have to have confidence in it. That's all of our knowledge is about, is having confidence in what we think we know, and then convincing others that it's the answer enough so that society can go on in a way that we can function until the next new invention or the next new discovery comes along. And then we have to shift our confidence, right? Confidence is again about knowing. It's not about, again, walking into the room and trying to stick your chest out and trying to be the loudest and get all the attention. Confidence is simply knowing it. You know that you don't have to, or you can if you want to. You know that how you speak is how you speak. You know that how you feel is how you feel. But you also are able to be malleable and say, look, I can shift how I'm presenting myself if I'm not in the right, which is knowing that if others are like, listen, even if you know that this is how you feel and think in this environment, this is how we roll. And then you have the choice to stay or go. This is what confidence is about, saying, okay, well, this is my tribe and I can do that because I want to be here. Or this is not my tribe and I don't need to adhere to that, so I'm not going to be here. This is all confidence is to me. I mean, I literally, I, this is like the last story I have. I went out this Friday the 13th because I was like, I'm not afraid of Friday the 13th. I'm like, it is just a day where it's concentrated energy and people choose to believe one way about it, and I chose to believe another way. But here's the thing I learned when I went out on a day that everyone puts negative energy on. It's not that it's a bad day. It just has so much negative stipulation around it that it becomes a test day. So I went out on Friday the 13th. I went to a festival and everyone, it was raining and people were drunk and it just looked so gloomy and heavy. And I was like, oh my, well, if I'm going to fit in, I might as well get a drink. And then I stopped myself. I was like, no, because not, then I'm going to just have the same gloomy, heavy energy that they do. So I chose to walk away from that. And my soul was like, thank you. Thank you for not drowning me out to try to fit in. That's confidence. The next thing, I was like, well, if I'm not going to go here, I'm going to go get a meal. I went to a restaurant. I kid you not, this all happened the same night. And I was like, I'm going to go get a meal at this restaurant, this little neighborhood restaurant. And I started talking to the bartender, and they seemed cool, and everything was going smooth. And then I ordered a drink, and the tap was out and it didn't run. And I was like, okay, whatever. And the bartender, I guess, asked the manager, like, hey, where's the cake? And they got into an argument because she was just like, you should know, and da 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 da. And in that moment, I was like, I looked around and I saw another customer look at me like, oh my. And usually in the past, I would have stayed because I would have felt awkward because I already ordered, which is so silly. But the new me was like, no, this is not my energy. They are not about to put this energy on the food that I'm about to put into my body or my experience. So I was like, you can cancel my order. And they both were like, oh, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, you both are arguing in the middle of the restaurant in front of customers. No, thank you. And so I went home and my body was like, oh my God, thank you. I did not want to be around that energy because you were going to absorb that. And that messes with your confidence because then you start feeling bad about, like, am I supposed to care? Am I not supposed to care? And I'm like, I don't have to care. Like, this has nothing to do with me. In this situation, I am just a customer. I do not need to be pulled into this. And I walked away. And then the same night, around the corner, I heard music blaring, and I walked around the block, and there's this a beautiful neighborhood, huge mansions, and they're having like a concert in front of their house. And clearly it's a private party, but they're also blasting music so loud that it's going over the neighborhood. And I could have just kept walking, but I was like, no, I'm confident enough to know that I belong here. So I just kind of walked over because everyone was standing in the street just listening to the music. And I just walked over and stood there and I danced and listened to the music. And you can tell people were looking at me like, who is this person? Do they live around here? Do we know them? And I'm like, I live on the other side of the block. I don't live on your street, but it's a neighborhood. And if it's a neighborhood party, I'm going to invite myself. And in that moment, it might sound rude, but I was thinking like, it's an outside event, so it can't really be that rude. And no one said anything to me. Everyone just kind of looked at me and smiled and danced along. And then after the music ended, I left. I walked away. I didn't try to talk to anyone. I didn't try to force myself into their world. And that's a different level of confidence that I don't think people understand. Like, you just because you go out and you be social doesn't mean you have to try to fit in with everyone. It doesn't mean you have to try to talk to anyone. Sometimes you just have to let your physical body be out, be seen, and let your soul just mingle and look around, because you have to remember, even if you're not talking to someone physically, they can be having like a daydream about you or be fantasizing about you. And that is soul interaction, love. That's the soul interacting on another plane with another soul, because if you glance over and you catch their eye and they're your type, you both start fantasizing, right? And then in that moment, you both can either have the confidence to talk to each other or not. But that's just how it works. So there's many levels to this, and I just wanted to talk about this topic because I find it so fascinating that the influence of confidence on interpersonal dynamics runs the world, but so many of us crap on confidence as if it's something that is wrong with us. And it's like, no, every level of confidence exists, and how you work and how you create relationships and how you dress and how you speak, it's your choice. Again, it's not about needing to fit in or wanting to fit in. It's just about knowing yourself. And if people like it and you then fit in with the like tribe, so be it. Congratulations, you did it. So I thank you again, and I love you for joining me on this journey of soul specks, healing abyss, as we are all specks of the universe and soul consciousness. Thank you, and have a great week. Bye.